What are we talking about in today's episode forward?
So there was a tweet that Christy put out on our forward page, and it was showing an image that we had made, or Christy had made a while back, maybe a year or so ago. It got shared by someone who's very well known in the marketing operation circle, Sara McNamara, on LinkedIn.
Sara McNamara.
And people have just gone wild for it. It's got over 50 comments and people debating it back and forth, and we're just going to bring it up now. It's just interesting to see how people have reacted to it, and I think maybe one of the reasons why people have reacted to it well is a lot of times in our world everything's so complicated, and it's hard to visualize kind of order of operations and processes. So when you see this very specific use case, you go, why one way might work better than another way, visualized, people are, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. So
yeah,
it's been pretty cool to see.
So what we're talking
feedback from
about
everyone
here then is where to enrich your leads and contacts. What system first? So Marketo versus Salesforce.
Yeah, and it all came from a question from one of our clients asking us that question. And should we get into it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest reason why enrichment should start in your marketing automation platform, whether it's even before the lead gets there or connected to your marketing automation platform to sync to Salesforce, is partly due to the issues that we have with synchronization across marketing automation, CRM. And a lot of those issues, sync errors, sync delays, backlogs, we're always battling with these things. So in anything, you want to just reduce the stress on the system, or you want to reduce the amount of times that Marketo will have to speak to Salesforce and send that data back and forth, because you're just reducing the likelihood of an issue happening. And then from that point, obviously you need a certain amount of data, or correct data, or enriched data, to then trigger different processes in Salesforce.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind a lot is like lead assignments. So one of the big purposes why we enrich leads is probably to get their address information, location information. A lot of lead assignments are based on territory, or even like business type, and that's what we'd be getting. So if you're getting that data after they hit Salesforce, depending on where your assignment rule is, if it's just out of the box Salesforce, it's only going to assign based on lead create.
Right, so, if you're using Salesforce assignment rules.
Yeah. So if your data is not getting set before that assignment's happening, it's not going to route properly, and then you're forced to run batches to kind of clean that up. There are tools now that listen for changes, like in data, but even then you have this wait time, or maybe an alert might go to the wrong person because it has to get reassigned later after it's been enriched. So the order operations of getting all that data as fast as possible is super important.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things related to that is that you have all of your lead scoring and your lead lifecycle processes typically will live in Marketo and not in Salesforce. So if you have a lead coming in, it needs to get synced to Salesforce to then complete its profile, which a lot of those fields are going to then be used in your lead scoring, smart campaigns and processes in Marketo. You'll have to wait for it to sync to Salesforce, get enriched, sync back to Marketo. Then those fields they'll be available for your lead scoring to pick them up. That then will trigger your MQL, potentially your MQL, hit your MQL threshold, which will trigger your lead lifecycle logic to then maybe MQL or alert, and then send that information back to Salesforce. And you've had to rely on three, sync there, sync back, and sync there, just to get, an MQL to Salesforce.
Yeah. And some people brought this up in the comments, but you talked about enriching even on the form level. Do you have any tools that some of our clients are using they think are good for that, or that do it really quickly? Like, I know there's Clearbit, because some people listening to this might be like, how do I get that enrichment at the form level?
Right. I mean, a lot of the data vendors offer that on the form, like Clearbit. But it's not, I mean, you don't have to do it. You either have the webhook that will enrich pretty quickly. But I mean, it is advantageous, right? The more that you can, and I guess it's just more of a principle you should be thinking about with marketing operations, the more that you can get the data sorted out earlier within your order of operations, the better, right? You don't want to have to wait for multiple syncs, other processes to happen to then kick off, getting the data profile and the completeness, the accuracy, the standardization, all of that. You don't have to wait for that. Wait for a lot of other things to happen before you can do that. The earlier you can do it, the better, just because so much relies on the data being correct. Like we mentioned, we talked about lead scoring, your lead lifecycle, your lead routing, alerts to your sales team, lead to account matching, auto conversion into an account. All of those things then have kind of follow-up processes that might be reliant on them. Like, you need to get the right account information from the enrichment tool that then hits your lead to account matching, auto converts into an account, which might be like a customer account. And maybe you treat customer accounts differently than you treat prospect accounts. And then you have other processes which might trigger based off that, right? Or you might have different campaigns running to either upsell customers or target prospects, and you need the data there as quickly as possible to add them to the right nurture or something. So there's so much within different steps within getting data right, complete, early, which then just smooths out everything else beyond that.
And for some marketing ops folks looking at this, they can see, oh, I have to do, potentially a few different steps before even syncing that record the first time, which in Marketo, I feel like can be a bit tricky, understanding like when someone's going to sync. So there might be some things that you can do within Marketo to make sure that the order of operations even works, because you might enrich in Marketo, but then that person already synced to Salesforce before the enrichment data even made its way back from like the webhook, or they got added to a program. So what are some of the things that you think should be put in place to help alleviate that?
Well, to make sure they don't accidentally sync straight away. The good thing about Marketo is that you do have to tell it to sync leads to Salesforce, either through the program to campaign sync, or through a flow step in a smart campaign. For lead creation, once they're created, then the data syncs independently from those two things. But so you do have control over when a lead enters Salesforce. So I've seen clients recently, and actually there's other reasons to do this, but they're starting to move away from the program to campaign sync from Marketo to Salesforce, because one, it seems to be pretty buggy and have issues. If you do have a sync backlog, it seems to get deprioritized. So then, if I had $1 for every time a client said to me, why aren't these leads in this campaign? And sometimes that can last hours. Sometimes I've seen it last days. I've got some clients that just never made it. And you just look at there's 1,000 people in the Marketo program, and there's 997 in the Salesforce campaign. And there's the lead, his sync to Salesforce is just not in the campaign. And so, moving away from that and then just having as a flow step within the smart campaign, then you can just put a wait step on, try and calculate how long it takes for all of your processes, like your enrichment scoring, lifecycle, standardization, data normalization, whatever you've got working in Marketo that you need to be correct before the lead hits Salesforce. It's quite easy to just run some tests and see how long that typically takes.
Yeah, or you can maybe run everyone through like run one flow, and then at the end of it, like check a checkbox that they've been enriched is yes, and or even went through that whole flow, and then that's maybe your determination to then add them to the program.
Right. Yeah, you hate wait steps, don't you?
Yeah. Wait steps are not as predictable. But
yeah, because there can always be something that causes an issue, right? Like you upload a list, and now your smart campaigns or all the campaigns, the backlog in your Marketo campaigns running, and
but at a minimum, I think that's a really good.
Isn't long enough.
It's a really good point, is to maybe break that up, take that away.
Yeah, regardless, taking that away gives you control. You do have to think about your Salesforce API calls, but there's ways that you can mitigate that. Usually, for these type of programs that we're talking about, it's programs like your online, like people coming through your website.
Yeah.
You're not getting thousands every hour or every day. So that's not a big concern. And then if you are doing big list uploads, maybe you think about either using the program to campaign sync, or if you're going to sync it all through a flow step, you do it at a certain time or day, work with your sales ops team. But I think the main thing is just really, I think so much people have got into marketing operations, and we usually inherit an instance, and you just kind of pick up where people left off, try to fix a few things here and there, but just taking a step back and really thinking about the order of operations, because it can just save you so much time. And I think one of the things why I think this resonates is because we've all seen the issues that result in not caring about this.
Totally. Yeah. I think the more experience you have, the more you realize it. Because even, for me over the past 10 years, I maybe would have said, yes, have control over your sync and enrich into Marketo, but actually laying the foundation to say, okay, we're going to really focus on order of operations here, I think I haven't even prioritized until recently, because the more tech we add onto our stack, or the more like tools that are relying on all of this data, it then prioritizes even more. Before, it was just mainly around how do we get these leads into our system,
right.
And our forms were longer even, so we had that data already, or we didn't have an enrichment tool. It was more like we had to go enrich those into files we'd send off somewhere, like offshore, and then re-enrich them, quarterly. So our processes have changed. So that's why our approach to this needs to change.
Yeah, and it's like as more tools and more complexity has been added, you really have to think about that order of operations, because your expectations on what's possible have gone up. So for example, if you were just reliant on lead assignment rules in Salesforce, your routing kind of procedures and what you could do is, they're still quite powerful, but it's pretty limited. Now everyone's got tools like Lean Data, and you can have very sophisticated lead routing workflows that rely on certain data points to really get the lead to the right person, the right territory, across multiple teams, SDRs, inbound, outbound, your AEs, and different regions, different territories. And it really, because we have a much more complex way of doing this, it means the data going in has to be right. Otherwise, you're going to just cause errors, and this is not going to work. And you put all of this investment into things, it's just still not working.
Yeah. Totally.
So, and if lean data is reliant on the data being there and ready for when that lean data process kicks off, unless you want to, wait and hope the sync back and forth works, then you want to make sure that you've really thought through the order of operations and how the data is getting populated on that record.
Yeah. So I guess in short, you know, the graphic shows we're a fan of enriching in your market automation platform, really having control on when someone syncs to Salesforce, using that data from the enrichment to really make sure that they're scored and set with the life cycle stage properly. So yeah, and I don't know, do you want to maybe end it with your favorite comment from that post? I thought it was kind of funny.
What was that? Oh, here we go. The last 5 years of my life is now in a single diagram.
Yeah, so hopefully you don't spend the next 5 years of your life trying to figure out how you can control your sync. Yeah, hopefully this is useful. So yeah, next time, on forward. See ya.